He was determined to become rich. He started out as a bookkeeper, a man from Cleveland, fascinated by numbers, figures, order, and divine discipline, who never interfered with anyone. Yet, within a lifetime, John D. Rockefeller came to control nearly 90% of America's oil, the most valuable resource of the industrial age. Oil.
Governments tried every way to stop him, and his rivals wanted to eliminate him. But in the end, they all failed. Because Rockefeller did not just build a company, he built a gigantic system within itself, a system that could withstand any law, any reform, any unstoppable force. Welcome to the place where money, power, time, and deep history intersect. Nothing here is as easy as it seems. Before Rockefeller became the symbol of greed or charity, he was merely a man struggling with the hardships of his time, and that time was merciless.
The early 1800s. Imagine an age of chaos wearing the mask of progress. After the Civil War, the United States began to exist for itself. Railroads connected the continents. Smoke rose from factories. Telegraph lines carried messages. Steel mills turned America into a web that captured the world. But every progress needs a power, a fuel. And in that era, the world was still lit by oil. Of course, we are talking not about crude oil itself, but the refined lamp oil called kerosene, the sticky liquid that lit homes before electricity brightened the nights.
Towns like Titusville, Pennsylvania, turned people instantly into gold rush beasts. They drilled wherever they could find oil, at every moment, and pushed the barrels into the market as fast as possible. Prices hit bottom, then soared, then fell again. Fortunes rose overnight and vanished overnight. There was no safety, no control, no regulation, no order, and no understanding. There were only speculations. This was the most brutal edge of capitalism, and at that very point, John D. Rockefeller began to appear on the world stage.
He was born in 1839, the son of a devout Baptist mother and a swindler father who constantly moved from place to place. He grew up believing that chaos was a great sin and that control was existence itself. At 16, he started working as a bookkeeper and fell in love with the complexity of balance sheets, the drowning beauty of numbers. One day he said, "I would rather earn 1% of 100 men's efforts than 100% of my own." When he wanted to enter the oil business, an industry that would later make him one of the world's wealthiest men, he saw waste and unnecessary extravagance.
In 1863, he made an investment by joining a small refinery business in Cleveland. Exactly 7 years later, he founded Standard Oil. From that moment on, he began to bring rules and order to a lawless, ruthless industry. While his competitors gambled, some losing, some winning, he went on business trips and negotiated with companies. He entered the railroad business, secretly making deals that gave him discounts, cheaper and more reliable transportation than anyone else. When his rivals objected, he bought them, often for prices far above their worth. When they resisted, he lowered prices and forced them to agree. By 1879, Standard Oil was processing more than 90% of America's oil. From the outside, this looked like a monopoly. But for Rockefeller, it was simply proof that what he was doing was right and efficient. He once told a journalist, "Competition is a sin." Because to him, competition wasted resources and caused the greatest harm to society. In his mind, his motive was not greed,
but perfectionism and kingship. Every drop of oil extracted, every inch of pipeline had to be perfect, down to the last detail. Rockefeller had discovered a truth that most businessmen of his time could not see. Wealth was not about producing more, it was about shaping the flow with your own hands. Oil had 3 stages: drilling, refining, and distribution. Most companies did only one of these, or did even that halfway. Rockefeller wanted all 3. He bought all the pipelines, the oil tankers, and eventually many of the barrel factories. He built storage depots and transport networks. He didn't just sell oil, he owned the network itself. Anyone who wanted to enter the market had to pass through his system. Then he found something entirely new. Not a product, but a structure. In 1882, he founded the Standard Oil Trust, a network that oversaw dozens of subsidiaries as one. This system controlled prices, production, and financial returns between cities. It was the first magnificent corporate structure in history, the ancestor of modern holdings, the father of all future organizations. From that day on, the word trust became synonymous with monopoly. Thanks to Rockefeller's foresight, the price of kerosene dropped by almost 90%. Consumers benefited greatly, but his rivals saw this as an unacceptable way of doing business. Meanwhile, pro-government politicians and bureaucrats began to notice the danger. Standard Oil was no longer just a company, it was a ghost government, a lawmaker. With its pipelines, lawyers, accountants, and railways, it ruled like a hidden empire. Newspapers began calling him the most hated man in America.
But not everyone saw him that way. Those who knew him closely said he was naive, disciplined, and terrifyingly calm. He dressed simply, avoided chaos, disliked show and idle talk. Every day he quoted from the Bible he believed in. He saw wealth and nobility as rewards earned through discipline and a sign of God's grace. While others flaunted their riches, he reshaped his earnings with almost religious precision. He often told his employees, "Frugality is an honor, waste is a sin." But it wasn't always like that, and power always creates an enemy. In 1904, the father of an investigative journalist, Tarbell, went bankrupt because of Rockefeller's methods. A short time later, she published her book, The History of the Standard Oil Company. Tarbell exposed to the public every one of Rockefeller's secret deals, destructive pricing tactics, coercive acquisitions, and silent maneuvers. The public suddenly erupted in anger. While Standard Oil became the symbol of ruthless capitalism, Rockefeller became the #1 name of monopoly.
That same year, provoked by politicians, the government suddenly took action. Under the Sherman Antitrust Act, dozens of lawsuits were filed against Standard Oil. After 7 years of trials, in 1911, the Supreme Court gave its verdict. Standard Oil was declared a monopoly and ordered to be divided into 34 independent companies. The newspapers called this the first victory for democracy. Rockefeller had lost for the first time. But in truth, he had only changed shape, because he still owned large shares in each of these new companies, enough to influence them all. When the companies split, investors fought each other to buy shares. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, Amoco. Within a year, their value
quintupled. Rockefeller, continuing with the same precision and system, woke up each morning richer than the last. The government had destroyed his monopoly, but in the process it had also made him richer and pushed him toward new investments. By 1913, the world's first billionaire stood before everyone. He was Rockefeller. In today's terms, his fortune exceeded $500 billion, more than Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Jack Ma combined. And he achieved this not with an invention, but by activating a flawless system.
His brilliance didn't stop there. He realized something else, something that very few would dare. He reinvented himself. He became a philanthropist. Hundreds of millions of dollars were directed towards schools, universities, science, research, and public health. The Rockefeller Foundation eventually helped eradicate diseases like tapeworms, hookworm, and yellow fever, while directly influencing modern education and the founding of the United Nations. To some, this was mere showmanship. To others, foresight. But somehow it worked. The ruthless, predatory man became a benefactor. His fame shifted from an unseen force to a visible presence. He left a blueprint for every future wealthy person. Rockefeller's formula was simple: control new trade routes, defy rules that exist outside of you, become an unstoppable river, then cleanse your name with philanthropy and generosity. Even if governments made rules, they couldn't stop the flow of his wealth and commerce. His name would echo in hospitals and museums alike. The system he built did not vanish, it grew like an avalanche. The trust model he discovered became an indispensable foundation of corporate America. Controlling every stage from input to output, integrating operations, this strategy remains at the core of companies like Apple, Amazon, and Tesla today. He wielded influence quietly through foundations and networks, transforming modern wealth into subtle power. Even the rumor or perceived defeat of his monopoly became a strategic lesson. In later years, splitting AT&T, regulating tech giants, history repeated itself in every new venture. New pieces could be stronger than the original. Rockefeller proved that wealth, when it reached a certain point, behaves like a tangible object. You bend it, shape it, and it takes its final form. You can't destroy it completely. You can only change its direction. By 1937, he had taken his last breath. He had foreseen how oil would transform the world. Airplanes, cars, plastics, electricity, all linked to his system. The substance that once lit lamps in his youth had become the lifeblood of the planet. Through his family's foundations and investments, his fortune continued to grow even after his death, shaping industry and politics in new ways. Perhaps his most enduring legacy: he taught the world that wealth is not chance, but a machine governed by rules. He didn't discover oil. He discovered leverage. Control, order, and operation, and you shape the economy with your hands.
Today's global giants still follow the same rulebook, harnessing technology, energy, and data flow. They grow rapidly, capture markets, and only apologize after increasing their fortune. When rule makers intervene, they continue seamlessly. When the public reacts, they pivot to philanthropy. Every new century follows the same pattern Rockefeller's system still works. Like any great system, it is constructed and hidden before our eyes. We call it innovation, continuity, success. But beneath it all lies the same principle. Turn chaos into opportunity and own the state of what you have. Faces, markets, centuries may change, but the system remains. Rockefeller's life was a cycle of religion, morality, and power. On Sundays, he gave lessons from the Bible. On other days, he identified and eliminated his competitors one by one. He donated nearly half his wealth while ensuring the rest continued to grow, ruthlessly crushing what stood in his way. There was no sin in what he did. He believed God had tasked him with bringing order to a world without rules and system. Once, he said, "I believe the power to make money is a gift from God." History tells another story. It wasn't a gift, it was a framework. And he executed it far better than anyone else.
If this video inspired you and you want more, subscribe. History repeats itself. You could be the architect of the next great success.